Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you gave up on something just because it seemed too difficult? The curious thing is that, often after giving up, that voice in your head comes, "Oh, it wasn't that important anyway." But is that true? Or are we just fooling ourselves to avoid admitting the difficulty? This fable of the fox and the grapes is a mirror of real life. We've all been that fox at some point, wanting something intensely, trying, failing, and finally making up an excuse to avoid dealing with the frustration. But what if I told you that this way of thinking could be holding you back from growing? That many incredible opportunities could be slipping away simply because you unconsciously adopted the same behavior as the fox? The problem was never the failure. The problem is what we do after it. Successful people fail just as much as anyone else. The difference is that, instead of belittling what they couldn't achieve, they discover new ways to reach what they want. So, before saying that something wasn't that great, maybe it's time to change your approach. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to dismantle this limiting mindset, understand how to avoid the traps of self-justification, and most importantly, learn how to turn any obstacle into a stepping stone for success. Because in the end, the grapes were never sour. The question is, are you ready to reach them? Every great goal starts with a desire. When the fox saw the grapes, she immediately felt an irresistible impulse. They looked perfect, delicious, and within her reach. Who hasn't been through this? Whether it's a dream job, an ambitious project, or even a personal goal, it's easy to get carried away by the initial excitement. The problem is that, in the euphoria of the moment, we often underestimate the challenges ahead. The truth is that desiring something intensely doesn't mean it will be easy to achieve. The fox, just like many people, believed that all she had to do was extend her paw, and the grapes would fall into her lap. This kind of thinking can be dangerous because it creates false expectations. Life doesn't work that way. Great achievements require more than just willpower. They demand strategy, preparation, and, above all, patience. How many times has someone decided to learn a new language, start a business, or get in shape, and at first felt like everything would be simple? This initial enthusiasm is valuable, but if it's not accompanied by a realistic plan, frustration can come quickly. Desire is only the starting point, but what truly defines success is what comes after, the effort and the ability to face the challenges that will arise along the way. And then the fox leaped. With all the confidence in the world, she launched herself into the air, believing that a single precise movement would be enough to reach her goal. But what happened? She missed. The grapes remained high up, out of reach. This is the moment when reality sets in. Desire alone isn't enough. It's here that many people encounter their first major obstacle and have to make a decision, give up or try again. At first, the fox chose the path of persistence. She wasn't immediately discouraged by failure, but assessed the situation and prepared to try again. This happens to anyone pursuing a meaningful goal. The first mistake shouldn't be the end but a learning opportunity. The writer who gets their first rejection from a publisher, the entrepreneur who faces their first financial failure, the student who gets a low grade on an important exam, they all have two options: give up or adjust the strategy. Persistence, however, needs to be intelligent. If the fox just repeats the same movements without thinking of a new approach, she will continue failing. This is where a fundamental lesson comes in. Insisting is not the same as evolving. Repeating the mistake won't bring a different result. What separates the winners from those who fall by the wayside is not just continuing to try, but learning from each attempt. The fox tried again. She jumped higher, ran with more momentum, stretched her legs as far as she could, and still nothing. The grapes remained out of reach. What once seemed like a sure victory began to turn into frustration. Who hasn't been through this? You put in the effort, do everything the right way, and yet the results don't come. At this point, the initial motivation begins to crumble, and doubt creeps into your mind. Can I really do this? Many people find themselves at this exact point when pursuing a goal. It's the student who spends hours studying but doesn't see improvement in their grades. The athlete who trains every day but doesn't feel progress. The professional who works hard but doesn't get recognition. It's at this stage that many give up, feeling like they're wasting their energy. But is the problem in the effort itself? Or is the problem in how the effort is being made? This brings us to an essential concept. Working hard is not the same as working effectively. If the fox had stopped to reflect, she might have thought of another strategy, maybe finding a branch to pull the grapes down, climbing the tree, or even asking another animal for help. But, driven by frustration, she kept repeating the same mistake. This happens to many people. When something doesn't work, instead of adjusting the plan, they simply repeat the same action hoping for a different result. Exhausted and frustrated, the fox finally stopped. She took a deep breath, looked at the grapes once more, and made her decision. If she couldn't reach them, then they weren't worth it. And so, without admitting her inability, she muttered to herself, "They must be green and sour anyway." Instead of acknowledging the difficulty or seeking a solution, she chose a more comfortable path for her ego, to devalue what she had once desired so much. This attitude is not exclusive to the fox. How many times has someone dreamed of something, fought for a while, but when they realize that success won't come easily, they change their tune? The student who says, "That college wasn't that great anyway," the entrepreneur who abandons a project and claims, "I didn't really want it that much," the person who gives up on a relationship saying, "It wasn't meant to be." This behavior has a name: cognitive dissonance, when we justify a failure to avoid admitting that we weren't capable. The danger of this mindset is that it hinders growth. If the fox had accepted that she couldn't reach the grapes at that moment, maybe she could have thought of a better way to try later. But by devaluing the goal, she closed the door to any learning. The same happens to anyone who deceives themselves to avoid dealing with frustration. Instead of growing, they remain stagnant. The worst part? Often, they don't even realize they're doing it. Most people read this fable and think it's just a story about giving up. But the truth goes much deeper than that. The great lesson here is not that the fox failed, but how she dealt with failure. She could have analyzed the situation, looked for alternatives, and learned from the experience. But instead, she chose the easier route, convincing herself that what she wanted wasn't that great after all. How many opportunities in life are lost simply because someone refuses to admit they need to improve? The secret to personal and professional growth is not avoiding challenges, but learning from them. What separates those who achieve success from those who stay in the same place is how they handle difficulties. When something doesn't work, there are three possible paths: give up and deceive yourself, like the fox; insist without strategy, like many do; or adjust the plan and try more intelligently. Only one of these paths leads to success. If the fox had stopped to think, maybe she would have found a better solution. The same applies to anyone pursuing a goal. Want to learn a new language? Maybe you need to change your approach. Want to grow financially? You might be missing new knowledge or strategy. Want a better relationship? Maybe you need to develop new emotional skills. The point is, when something seems unattainable, the solution is never simply to give up, it's to find a new path. Now, take a moment to think. How many times have you failed to achieve something because the path seemed too difficult? How many incredible opportunities have you abandoned because the first attempt didn't work? And in the end, did you convince yourself that it wasn't worth it? I challenge you to look at all of this with a fresh perspective. What are you letting slip away out of fear of trying again? Were the grapes you rejected really sour, or was it just that you couldn't reach them the right way? Now it's time to act. How about facing challenges as learning opportunities? Instead of giving up, how about changing your approach, testing new strategies, and most importantly, learning from what didn't work? The real failure isn't in falling, but in not getting up. You have all the tools necessary to restart, grow, and conquer what once seemed unattainable. The secret lies in intelligent persistence, not stubbornness. So, what will you do differently on your journey? Apply what you've learned here, adjust your strategy, and seek new solutions. And if you're truly committed to your success, subscribe to the channel, activate the notifications, and continue this journey of self-discovery and growth. Because those who persist, learn. And those who learn, conquer. Let's go together. Now tell me, have you been acting like the fox too? What do you plan to change starting today? Leave your comment and share this message with someone you know needs to hear it. And if you want to keep learning to see life in a way few people do, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and come build your own path to success. See you in the next video.